Break the Mold. Rewiring Your Brain for Infinite Creativity. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. Creativity is not a gift given to a select few, it is a skill, a muscle, a force that can be trained and expanded. Yet, most people go through life believing that creativity is something you either have or you do not. They assume that innovation is reserved for artists, musicians, or visionaries, while they remain trapped in the limits of routine thinking. But this is a lie. The truth is, your brain is wired for creativity. The problem is that it is also wired for efficiency, and efficiency is the enemy of original thought. Your brain loves patterns. It builds habits, routines, and shortcuts to conserve energy. This is useful for survival, but it kills creativity. Left unchecked, your mind will settle into predictable loops, solving problems in the same ways, seeing the world through the same lens, and missing opportunities for innovation. The good news? Your brain is not fixed. It can be rewired. Through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, you can break out of old patterns and train yourself to think in limitless, unpredictable ways. This book is about breaking the mold. It is about disrupting the patterns that keep you stuck, pushing your brain into unfamiliar territory, and developing a mindset that welcomes curiosity, exploration, and uncertainty. You will learn how to shake up your routines, embrace discomfort, and make unexpected connections between ideas. You will discover how the most creative minds in history have rewired their brains for innovation, and how you can do the same. Creativity is not about waiting for inspiration. It is about building the conditions for it to emerge. The more you train your brain to think differently, the more natural creativity becomes. The mold is not just meant to be broken, it is meant to be shattered. The moment you realize that creativity has no limits, you become infinite. Chapter 1. Creativity is a muscle, not a gift. You've been told that creativity is something you either have or you don't. That some people are born with a spark, a gift, an untouchable brilliance that the rest can only admire from a distance. But what if that's wrong? What if creativity isn't a gift at all, but a skill, one that can be trained, strengthened, and mastered? The truth is, your brain is not a fixed system. It is fluid, adaptable, and constantly reshaping itself based on how you use it. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself in response to experiences. Every thought you entertain, every new challenge you take on, every unfamiliar path you explore, your brain adjusts. It forms new neural pathways, strengthens connections between neurons, and restructures its internal framework. Creativity is no different. Think of your creativity like a muscle. If you never use it, it weakens, it atrophies, it shrinks from disuse. But the moment you push it stretching beyond the limits of what feels comfortable, you activate growth. You create new connections, new ways of thinking, new perspectives. You break the mold. The reason creativity feels elusive isn't because you lack it. It's because you've conditioned your brain to prioritize efficiency over exploration. Your brain loves efficiency. It seeks out patterns, defaults to the familiar, and streamlines processes to conserve energy. This is why habits form, why routines solidify, and why most people go through life on autopilot, repeating the same thoughts, the same actions, the same perspectives. But creativity thrives on disruption. Imagine a well-worn hiking trail. You've walked it so many times, you barely think about where to step. That's your brain's comfort zone. It's predictable, safe. But creativity doesn't live there. Creativity is what happens when you step off the trail, when you wade through the unknown, when you navigate terrain that forces you to think differently. It's uncomfortable at first. Uncertainty always is. But the more you engage with the unfamiliar, the more your brain adapts. You become more comfortable with ambiguity, more open to new ideas, more fluid in your thinking. You become creative not by waiting for inspiration, but by actively training yourself to see beyond what is obvious. Consider how children approach the world. They experiment. They ask questions. They make connections between seemingly unrelated things. They haven't yet been trained to fear mistakes or avoid the unknown. That unfiltered curiosity is the essence of creativity. But over time, conditioning replaces curiosity with caution. You stop exploring. You stop questioning. You start believing that creativity belongs to someone else. To rewire your brain for infinite creativity, you have to unlearn the limits imposed on you. You have to break the cycle of default thinking and introduce intentional disruption. Take a different route to work. Read a book from a genre you've never considered. Use your non-dominant hand to write. These small acts of novelty might seem insignificant, but to your brain, they are revolutionary. Each unfamiliar experience forces your neurons to communicate in new ways, strengthening the creative circuits that have long been dormant. Creativity is not about waiting for inspiration. It's about building the conditions for it to emerge. Just as an athlete doesn't wait to feel strong before training, you don't wait to feel creative before creating. You engage. You experiment. You push past the comfort of familiarity and step into the unknown. The more you do this, the more creativity stops feeling like a rare flash of insight and starts becoming second nature. The most prolific creators in history weren't born with more talent than you. They simply exercised their creativity relentlessly. They embraced failure as part of the process. They sought out discomfort. They disrupted their own thinking. And in doing so, they rewired their brains to make creativity a default state. You have the same ability. Your brain is waiting for you to break the mold. Chapter 2. How your brain resists change. Your brain is not designed for creativity. It is designed for survival. Every function, every decision, every unconscious habit has one primary purpose: to keep you safe. This is why the familiar feels comfortable and the unknown feels threatening. Your brain has spent a lifetime optimizing for efficiency, conserving energy, and reducing unpredictability. Creativity, however, demands the opposite. It requires uncertainty, experimentation, and risk. It requires stepping into mental territory your brain instinctively resists. The resistance to change is hardwired. Deep in your brain, the amygdala detects potential threats. Anything new, anything untested, anything that doesn't fit within your established patterns is flagged as risky. It's why trying a new creative process can feel uncomfortable. It's why a blank canvas, an unwritten page, or an unfamiliar challenge can trigger hesitation. Your brain equates change with danger, even when that change is the very thing that will unlock your creative potential. This is why people cling to routines. Habits provide predictability. They reduce cognitive load, allowing your brain to operate on autopilot. When you follow a routine, your brain doesn't have to work as hard. It can rely on pre-existing neural pathways rather than forging new ones. While this efficiency is useful for productivity, it is a creativity killer. Creativity requires breaking those routines, challenging ingrained thought patterns, and forcing your brain to work in ways it usually avoids. Consider how you respond when faced with an unfamiliar problem. If it falls outside of your usual way of thinking, your brain tries to fit it into an existing framework. You rely on what has worked before, what feels natural, what seems obvious. But true creativity happens when you abandon these default responses and explore alternatives. This requires effort. It requires cognitive discomfort. It requires resisting the pull of the familiar. Breaking mental patterns is not easy, but it is necessary. Your neural pathways are like trails in a dense forest. The more you use a path, the more defined it becomes. The less you use it, the more overgrown and inaccessible it gets. This is why habits are so powerful. They reinforce neural connections, making certain behaviors automatic. But it also means that breaking free from old ways of thinking requires deliberate action. You must actively carve out new pathways, forcing your brain to build connections it has never built before. The easiest way to do this is to introduce controlled disruption. Change the way you approach daily tasks. Switch up your morning routine. Listen to music you wouldn't normally listen to. Read something outside your field of expertise. Engage in conversations with people who challenge your beliefs. These small disruptions create friction, forcing your brain to adapt. Over time, this adaptation strengthens your creative circuits, making it easier to generate new ideas, solve problems in innovative ways, and think beyond your usual patterns. Discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is changing. When you feel resistance, when you experience the urge to retreat into old habits, that is your brain struggling against rewiring itself. This is a necessary struggle. Every time you push past that initial discomfort, you are reshaping your neural architecture. You are training your brain to embrace uncertainty, rather than avoid it. Creativity thrives in environments where change is the norm. Look at the most innovative minds in history. They were not more intelligent than you. They simply learned to override the brain's instinct to resist change. They conditioned themselves to see discomfort as a signal of growth rather than a warning sign. They sought out challenges, embraced failure, and constantly exposed themselves to new ways of thinking. Your brain will always prefer efficiency. It will always try to pull you back to what is known, but you are not a prisoner of your default wiring. You have the ability to break free, to forge new paths, to disrupt the predictable and embrace the unknown. The more you do this, the more your brain will adapt. Creativity is not about having the right ideas, it is about training your mind to be comfortable with change. The moment you stop resisting, you unlock infinite potential. Chapter 3: Neuroplasticity, the brain's superpower. Your brain is not a rigid machine. It is a living, evolving network, constantly reshaping itself based on how you use it. This ability to change, adapt, and rewire is called neuroplasticity. Every thought you think, every habit you reinforce, and every challenge you take on physically alters the structure of your brain. The more you engage in creative thinking, the more your brain strengthens the neural pathways responsible for innovation. Creativity is not a talent, it is a byproduct of training your brain to make new connections. Imagine your brain as a vast landscape of roads. Some are well-paved highways, formed by repeated thoughts and behaviors. These represent your habits, your familiar ways of thinking, and your default problem-solving strategies. But beyond those highways lie untraveled paths, connections that exist but remain unused. Every time you think differently, challenge an assumption, or attempt something unfamiliar, you activate these hidden pathways. At first, the road is rough, unpaved, and difficult to travel. But with repetition, the path becomes clearer. Eventually, what was once unfamiliar becomes second nature. Neuroscientists have proven that the brain continues to develop and change throughout life. Old beliefs that creativity declines with age have been debunked. The truth is that your ability to think creatively depends entirely on how often you exercise it. The more you expose your brain to novelty, the stronger its adaptability becomes. This is why lifelong learners, artists, and problem solvers maintain high levels of creativity. They continuously stimulate their neuroplasticity. One of the most powerful ways to rewire your brain for creativity is through deliberate practice. This means engaging in activities that challenge you just beyond your current skill level. If you only operate within your comfort zone, your brain has no reason to form new connections. But when you push yourself, whether by experimenting with new ideas, tackling difficult problems, or learning a skill that forces you to think differently, your brain responds by strengthening the neural networks needed to support that growth. Curiosity fuels neuroplasticity. When you expose yourself to different fields of study, immerse yourself in diverse experiences, or engage with people who think differently, your brain creates connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. This process, known as associative thinking, is the foundation of creativity. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history have come from unexpected intersections, where knowledge from one domain influences innovation in another. Rewiring your brain also requires repetition. Just as a single workout does not build muscle, a single creative exercise does not rewire your thinking. You must engage in creative habits consistently. This could mean setting aside time for brainstorming, sketching ideas, writing down thoughts, or solving problems in unconventional ways. The goal is to make creative thinking a natural, automatic part of your daily life. Your environment plays a critical role in shaping neuroplasticity. If you surround yourself with routine, predictability, and sameness, your brain will reflect that stagnation. But if you actively seek novelty, exploring new places, consuming unfamiliar art, or interacting with people outside your usual circles, you provide your brain with the raw material for new connections. The more diverse your inputs, the more expansive your creative output. Fear of failure inhibits neuroplasticity. When you avoid mistakes, you limit your brain's ability to grow. Neuroscientific studies show that making errors and learning from them strengthens neural pathways more effectively than effortless success. The most creative minds embrace failure as part of the process. They understand that every misstep is a sign of their brain adapting, reshaping, and learning. The potential for rewiring your brain is limitless. No matter how rigid your thinking feels, no matter how stuck in patterns you believe you are, your brain is waiting for new instructions. It will reshape itself in response to what you demand of it. The key is to be intentional. The more you challenge your mind, expose it to novelty, and push it beyond its defaults, the more it transforms. Creativity is not about waiting for inspiration. It is about forging new pathways, strengthening new connections, and training your brain to see possibilities where others see limitations. The more you engage, the more infinite your creativity becomes. Chapter 4. Disrupt the routine. Your brain loves patterns. It craves predictability, efficiency, and the ease of repetition. This is why habits form so quickly and why routines become second nature. But while this efficiency helps you function, it also limits your creative potential. The more you operate on autopilot, the less your brain is forced to think in new ways. Creativity thrives in disruption. If you want to rewire your brain for infinite creativity, you must learn to break free from the familiar. Routines create mental shortcuts. Once a behavior is repeated enough times, your brain automates it. This reduces cognitive effort, allowing you to complete tasks without much thought. It is why you can drive to work without remembering the journey, or scroll through your phone without realizing how much time has passed. While useful, this automation is the enemy of creativity. When your brain follows the same patterns daily, it stops forming new connections. Without novelty, your neural pathways remain unchanged, and your ability to think differently diminishes. Disrupting your routine forces your brain to engage. It breaks the automatic loops and requires active thinking. Something as simple as brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, changing your route to work, or altering the sequence of your morning habits can have a profound effect. These small disruptions force your brain to process new information, strengthening its adaptability and encouraging fresh perspectives. Exposure to new environments is a powerful way to break mental stagnation. Traveling to an unfamiliar place, even if it is just a different part of your city, challenges your brain to navigate unknown territory. New sights, sounds, and experiences activate neural growth. This is why people often feel more inspired while traveling. Novelty floods the brain with stimuli, sparking creativity. However, you do not need to travel far to experience this effect. Even rearranging your workspace, trying a different coffee shop, or engaging with people outside your usual circles can introduce enough novelty to disrupt your routine. Engaging in new activities rewires your brain at an even deeper level. Learning a musical instrument, taking up a new hobby, or practicing a skill outside your expertise forces your brain to form entirely new connections. These experiences strengthen cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift thinking patterns and see problems from different angles. This skill is at the core of creative breakthroughs. The more diverse your activities, the more adaptable your brain becomes. Curiosity is a tool for routine disruption. Instead of passively experiencing the world, ask questions. Why is something done this way? How could it be improved? What would happen if you changed one element? Challenging assumptions disrupts mental autopilot, pushing your brain to explore alternative possibilities. Many of the greatest innovations in history came from people who questioned the norm and dared to think differently. Changing the way you consume information is another method of disruption. If you always read the same genre, listen to the same music, or watch the same type of content, your brain operates within a narrow framework. Exposing yourself to different ideas, art forms, and disciplines broadens your thinking. Read a book in a genre you have never explored. Listen to a podcast outside your field. Watch a documentary on a topic unrelated to your work. These shifts introduce new perspectives, feeding your brain with fresh inputs that fuel creativity. Physical movement also plays a role in disrupting mental routines. Studies show that walking, especially in nature, enhances cognitive function and creative thinking. The act of moving stimulates brain activity, encouraging new ideas. This is why many creative thinkers, from philosophers to inventors, incorporated walking into their daily routines. If you feel creatively stuck, step away from your desk and take a walk. The movement will help reset your thought process. The key to lasting creativity is continuous disruption. One-time changes are not enough. You must make it a habit to seek novelty, challenge assumptions, and engage with the unfamiliar. The more you introduce change, the more adaptable your brain becomes. Over time, creativity stops feeling like an effort and becomes an instinct. Your brain learns to embrace the unknown, to find inspiration in everyday moments, and to generate ideas effortlessly. Creativity is not about waiting for inspiration. It is about training your mind to break the mold every single day. Chapter 5. The Power of Seeking Discomfort. Your brain is wired to seek safety. It avoids risk, uncertainty, and anything that feels unfamiliar. This is an evolutionary survival mechanism designed to protect you from harm. But creativity does not grow in comfort. It thrives in the spaces where you feel uncertain, challenged, and slightly out of your depth. The key to rewiring your brain for infinite creativity is to intentionally seek discomfort. Discomfort is often mistaken for danger. When you try something new, your brain perceives it as a threat because it lacks past experiences to predict the outcome. This is why stepping outside your comfort zone feels unsettling. But what your brain does not initially recognize is that this discomfort is the very thing that triggers growth. Every time you engage in an unfamiliar task, your brain creates new neural connections. It learns to adapt, adjust, and process information in novel ways. The most innovative minds in history understood the link between discomfort and creativity. They embraced situations that forced them to think differently. They deliberately put themselves in environments that disrupted their normal patterns. If you want to unlock your full creative potential, you must be willing to do the same. Instead of avoiding situations that make you uncomfortable, lean into them. Discomfort is a sign that you are stretching your cognitive limits. One way to introduce productive discomfort is to challenge assumptions. When you accept ideas without questioning them, your brain remains in passive mode. But when you actively question how things work, why they exist, or what could be different, you force your brain to engage in creative thinking. Asking what if, and why not, disrupts conventional patterns and sparks new possibilities. Another powerful strategy is to deliberately engage in tasks where you might fail. Failure is often seen as something to be avoided, but in reality it is one of the most effective tools for creative growth. When you make a mistake, your brain undergoes a process of learning and recalibration. It rewires itself to understand what went wrong and how to approach the problem differently next time. This is why people who experiment frequently, fail often, and adjust quickly tend to be the most creative. They do not fear discomfort, they use it as fuel. Physical discomfort can also enhance mental creativity. Studies show that engaging in physical challenges, such as learning a new sport, practicing endurance training, or exposing yourself to unfamiliar physical activities, triggers cognitive flexibility. When your body is pushed beyond its normal limits, your brain responds by adapting. This mental flexibility translates into creative problem-solving skills. Seeking out diverse experiences is another way to train yourself to be comfortable with discomfort. When you expose yourself to different cultures, perspectives, and disciplines, you force your brain to process new information. This broadens your creative lens and allows you to make unexpected connections between ideas. If you always stay within familiar surroundings, your thinking remains narrow. But if you immerse yourself in the unfamiliar, your brain becomes more adaptable, and your creativity expands. Social discomfort is equally valuable. Engaging in conversations with people who challenge your views, debating ideas, or putting yourself in situations where you must think on your feet sharpens your creative thinking. Many of the greatest breakthroughs come from collaborative friction, when differing perspectives collide and force new solutions to emerge. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations, seek them out. They push you to refine your thoughts and expand your understanding. Embracing discomfort does not mean recklessly diving into chaos. It means intentionally placing yourself in situations that stretch your thinking, challenge your perceptions, and push you beyond what feels easy. It means recognizing that every moment of discomfort is an opportunity for growth. The more you condition yourself to seek it, the more adaptable and creative you become. Creativity is not about staying where it is safe, it is about stepping into the unknown, feeling the discomfort, and creating something extraordinary despite it. Your brain will resist at first, but over time it will adapt. It will learn that discomfort is not a threat but a gateway to innovation. When you train yourself to seek discomfort instead of avoid it, you unlock a level of creativity that is limitless. Chapter 6. Consuming with Curiosity. Your brain is constantly absorbing information. Every book you read, every conversation you have, every movie you watch, it all becomes fuel for your thoughts. But most people consume passively. They read without questioning, listen without analyzing, and observe without truly seeing. Creativity does not thrive on passive input. It requires curiosity. It demands that you actively engage with the world, breaking down ideas, questioning assumptions, and making connections where none seem to exist. Curiosity is the engine of creative thinking. It forces your brain to go beyond the surface, to search for hidden meaning, and to explore possibilities that others overlook. When you consume content with curiosity, you do not just take in information, you interact with it. You ask, how does this connect to what I already know? Or what if this idea was applied in a completely different way? The more you challenge yourself to think beyond what is presented, the stronger your creative instincts become. One of the best ways to develop this habit is to read widely and unpredictably. If you always consume the same type of content, your thinking becomes trapped within a narrow framework. But when you expose yourself to different genres, perspectives, and disciplines, your brain starts making unexpected connections. A scientific concept might inspire a business innovation. A piece of history might provide the missing link to a creative problem. The broader your sources of information, the more expansive your thinking becomes. But reading alone is not enough. You must question what you consume. Instead of simply accepting information, ask yourself why it was presented in a certain way. What biases might be influencing it? What perspective is missing? What alternative explanations exist? Creative minds do not just absorb, they dissect, analyze, and reconstruct ideas in new ways. Consuming with curiosity also means seeking perspectives that challenge your beliefs. It is easy to reinforce what you already know, but true creativity requires exposure to ideas that disrupt your thinking. Engage with viewpoints that contradict your own. Read authors you disagree with. Listen to people from different backgrounds. These experiences force you to think critically, to reassess your assumptions, and to refine your understanding. Creative breakthroughs often emerge when conflicting ideas collide. Curiosity also extends beyond books and media. The world itself is a source of infinite inspiration if you train yourself to look at it differently. Instead of walking through life on autopilot, start noticing details. Observe how people interact, how objects are designed, how systems function. Ask yourself why things work the way they do and how they could be improved. The more questions you ask, the more insights you gain. One powerful exercise is to take something ordinary and imagine it differently. Look at a common object and ask, how else could this be used? Or what if this was designed completely differently? This forces your brain to break away from conventional thinking and explore new possibilities. Many groundbreaking inventions have come from people who saw the familiar in an unfamiliar way. Creativity is not just about generating ideas. It is about making connections between ideas that seem unrelated. This ability comes from curiosity, the willingness to explore beyond the obvious and seek deeper understanding. When you consume content with curiosity, your brain becomes a playground of possibilities. The difference between ordinary thinking and creative thinking is not intelligence, it is engagement. Anyone can read a book, watch a film, or listen to a conversation. But not everyone extracts deeper meaning from those experiences. The creative mind is always active, always questioning, always searching for new connections. Your ability to think differently is directly tied to how you consume information. If you want to be more creative, start being more curious. Challenge what you read, question what you hear, and look deeper into everything around you. Creativity does not come from passively absorbing the world. It comes from actively engaging with it. The more curiosity you bring to your daily life, the more limitless your creativity becomes. Chapter 7. Reverse Engineering Genius. Creativity is not magic. It is not an unexplainable force reserved for the chosen few. It is a process, a series of steps, a method that can be studied, understood, and replicated. The world's most innovative thinkers are not necessarily the most gifted. They are simply the most deliberate in how they approach problems. If you want to unlock infinite creativity, you must learn to reverse engineer genius, breaking down how great ideas are formed and applying those patterns to your own thinking. Every breakthrough, every revolutionary idea, every stunning work of art follows a structure. It may seem spontaneous from the outside, but beneath the surface lies a process. By studying how creative minds work, you can train your brain to think like them. The first step is to analyze patterns. Look at history's greatest innovators. What made their ideas groundbreaking? How did they approach problems? What did they do differently from everyone else? The answers are rarely about raw talent. They are about strategy. One of the most effective techniques for reverse engineering creativity is to deconstruct masterpieces. Whether it is a novel, a painting, a product design, or a business strategy, break it down into its essential components. Identify the choices that were made, the techniques that were used, and the structure that holds it all together. Ask yourself why it works. What principles are at play? What makes it compelling? By understanding the mechanics behind greatness, you gain the ability to recreate it in your own way. Another powerful approach is to mimic before you innovate. Many of the greatest artists, writers, and musicians started by copying their idols. They studied form, structure, and execution before developing their own style. This is not about plagiarism, it is about learning through imitation. By recreating the methods of great minds, you internalize their creative logic. Over time, this allows you to develop your own unique approach. Genius is rarely about originality in its purest form. It is about combining existing ideas in new ways. This is why cross-disciplinary learning is essential. The most creative breakthroughs happen at the intersection of fields. When knowledge from one domain is applied to another, unexpected insights emerge. If you want to think like a genius, expose yourself to diverse influences. Study science if you are an artist. Explore philosophy if you are an entrepreneur. Creativity thrives when ideas collide. The best innovators also embrace constraints. They do not see limitations as obstacles, they see them as tools for creativity. When resources are scarce, when time is limited, when conditions are imperfect, the brain is forced to think more creatively. Constraints eliminate infinite choices and push you to find solutions within a defined space. This is why some of the most groundbreaking ideas have come from people working with strict limitations. If you want to boost your creativity, impose constraints on yourself, restrict your materials, shorten your deadlines, or work within unusual parameters. The pressure will force innovation. Reverse engineering genius also requires breaking conventional thinking. Great minds do not follow established rules, they question them. They challenge assumptions, reject traditional solutions, and seek entirely new approaches. If you want to think like a genius, you must train yourself to question everything. Do not accept things as they are. Ask why. Ask what if. Ask how it could be done differently. The more you disrupt your own thinking, the more creative your ideas will become. Creativity is not a mystery. It is a process that can be studied, replicated, and mastered. The greatest thinkers in history were not born with a secret ability. They learned how to think in ways others did not. You can do the same. Break down what works, analyze the patterns, experiment with new methods, and challenge assumptions. The more you practice, the more instinctive it becomes. Genius is not about inspiration, it is about understanding how creativity works and making it your own. Chapter 8. Embracing failure as a creative catalyst. Failure is the most underutilized tool in creativity. Most people fear it, avoid it, and see it as a sign to stop. But the most creative minds in history view failure differently. They do not see it as an obstacle, they see it as a stepping stone. Every failed attempt refines an idea, eliminates weak approaches, and brings clarity to what works. If you want to rewire your brain for infinite creativity, you must stop resisting failure and start using it as fuel. Your brain is designed to avoid pain. This includes the psychological discomfort of failure. When something does not work, your natural instinct is to retreat, to abandon the effort, and to stick with what feels safe. But the most creative breakthroughs do not come from safe ideas. They emerge from risk, experimentation, and repeated failures that reveal new insights. Every great invention, every revolutionary concept, every groundbreaking piece of art is built on a foundation of failed attempts. Failure forces your brain to adapt. When an idea does not work, your brain is forced to reassess, adjust, and think differently. This process strengthens neural connections and improves problem-solving skills. The more you fail, the better you get at generating solutions. Avoiding failure means avoiding growth. But leaning into failure means expanding your creative potential. The key is to reframe failure not as an endpoint, but as data information that guides you toward better outcomes. Most people misunderstand failure because they define it too narrowly. They see failure as a final result rather than a necessary stage of progress. But failure is not a verdict. It is feedback. A wrong note in music teaches what does not fit. A bad draft in writing shows what needs to change. A rejected idea in business highlights what is not resonating. If you see failure as proof that you are incapable, you will stop creating. But if you see failure as evidence that you are refining your thinking, you will keep pushing forward. The most successful creatives in history embraced failure as part of their process. Thomas Edison famously tested thousands of materials before finding the right one for the light bulb. Each failure was not wasted effort, it was a step closer to success. Walt Disney was fired from his first job for lacking imagination. J.K. Rowling faced rejection from multiple publishers before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. These creators did not succeed despite failure, they succeeded because of it. A powerful way to embrace failure is to reframe mistakes as experiments. Scientists do not see failed tests as wasted time. They see them as discoveries. When you approach creativity with the mindset of an experimenter, you remove the emotional weight from failure. Instead of seeing a bad idea as personal failure, see it as part of the process. Every misstep gives you more knowledge, making future success more likely. Another key strategy is to fail fast and often. The more you iterate, the more you learn. Instead of waiting for a perfect idea, test multiple rough ideas quickly. Let go of perfectionism and focus on rapid experimentation. This approach speeds up the learning process and leads to more breakthroughs. Many of the world's most innovative companies, from Pixar to Google, follow this philosophy, releasing, testing, and refining instead of waiting for perfection. Creativity does not happen in a straight line. It is messy, unpredictable, and filled with failed attempts. But those failures are not setbacks, they are the foundation of success. The faster you fail, the faster you learn. The more you learn, the more you create. If you want to unlock infinite creativity, stop fearing failure. Start using it. It is not something to avoid, it is something to master. Chapter 9. Cross-pollination, creativity from the unexpected. The most groundbreaking ideas do not come from a single field. They emerge at the intersection of disciplines, where unrelated concepts collide and form something new. Creativity is not about generating ideas from nothing, it is about connecting existing ideas in unexpected ways. If you want to rewire your brain for infinite creativity, you must learn to think beyond your domain and seek inspiration from places that seem unrelated. Cross-pollination happens when knowledge from one area is applied to another. History is filled with examples of breakthroughs that came from borrowing ideas from different fields. The structure of Velcro was inspired by the way burrs stick to fabric. The development of touchscreens was influenced by electrical engineering principles outside of computing. The idea for the assembly line that revolutionized manufacturing was adapted from the flow of meat processing plants. Innovation is rarely about inventing from scratch, it is about seeing patterns where others do not. Your brain naturally categorizes information. It tries to keep knowledge in separate compartments. But the most creative thinkers do not allow these divisions to exist. They train themselves to find connections between seemingly unrelated subjects. The more diverse your influences, the greater your ability to make original associations. If you only study one discipline, you think like everyone else in that field. But if you explore multiple areas, you create a unique mental framework that allows for new ideas to emerge. One of the best ways to encourage cross-pollination is to consume content outside of your expertise. If you are a writer, study architecture. If you are a scientist, explore philosophy. If you are an entrepreneur, learn about music composition. Each field has its own patterns, systems, and problem-solving approaches that can be adapted in surprising ways. Many of the greatest minds in history were polymaths. Leonardo da Vinci studied anatomy, engineering, and art, and his ability to combine these fields led to visionary discoveries. The more knowledge you absorb from different areas, the more fuel you give your creativity. Conversations are another powerful tool for cross-pollination. Engaging with people outside of your industry exposes you to new perspectives. The questions they ask, the ways they think, and the problems they solve all challenge your own assumptions. Some of the most successful companies actively seek out diverse teams for this reason. Bringing together individuals with different backgrounds increases the likelihood of innovative ideas. If you want to enhance your creativity, surround yourself with people who see the world differently than you do. Travel is another catalyst for creative cross-pollination. Experiencing different cultures, languages, and traditions forces your brain to break habitual thinking patterns. Many of the greatest artistic and intellectual movements were influenced by exposure to foreign ideas. If travel is not an option, even small shifts like exploring new neighborhoods, trying unfamiliar foods, or immersing yourself in another culture's literature can trigger new perspectives. Breaking routine also encourages unexpected connections. If you always consume information in the same way, your brain follows predictable patterns. But if you switch things up, listening to a science podcast while painting, reading poetry before brainstorming business strategies, or sketching ideas instead of writing them down, you activate new neural pathways. Creative thinking thrives when the brain is forced to operate in unfamiliar ways. The key to cross-pollination is curiosity. Instead of dismissing something as irrelevant, ask how it might apply to what you do. When you encounter a new concept, explore it deeply. Ask how its principles might be transferred to another area. The most creative breakthroughs happen when unrelated ideas merge into something entirely new. Creativity is not about staying within your lane. It is about collecting, combining, and experimenting with ideas from everywhere. The more you cross-pollinate, the more unpredictable and innovative your thinking becomes. Creativity flourishes at the edges, where different disciplines meet, where ideas clash, and where patterns emerge from the unexpected. If you want to break the mold, start looking beyond it. The connections you make could lead to something extraordinary. Chapter 10. Designing a creativity, optimized environment. Your environment shapes your thinking more than you realize. Every object in your space, every sound in the background, and every detail in your surroundings influences how your brain processes information. Creativity does not exist in isolation, it thrives in spaces designed to support it. If you want to rewire your brain for infinite creativity, you must intentionally craft an environment that fuels inspiration, minimizes distractions, and encourages deep thinking. The first step is to declutter. A chaotic space leads to a chaotic mind. When your environment is cluttered, your brain must constantly filter unnecessary information, reducing cognitive efficiency. Removing distractions, both physical and digital, allows your mind to focus. This does not mean creating a sterile space. It means curating an environment that aligns with your creative goals. Keep only what sparks inspiration and eliminates mental noise. Lighting plays a crucial role in cognitive function. Studies show that natural light enhances mood, focus, and problem-solving ability. Artificial lighting, especially harsh fluorescent bulbs, can lead to mental fatigue. If possible, position your workspace near a window. If natural light is limited, use warm, adjustable lighting to create a setting that promotes clarity and concentration. Small changes in lighting can dramatically shift how engaged and creative you feel. Color psychology also affects creativity. Different colors trigger different cognitive responses. Blue promotes deep thinking, green enhances imagination, and yellow stimulates energy. Your surroundings should reflect the type of creativity you want to cultivate. If you need focus, use cooler tones. If you need stimulation, incorporate vibrant hues. The goal is to make your space feel like an extension of your creative process. Sound is another powerful environmental factor. Some people thrive in complete silence, while others work best with background noise. Research suggests that moderate ambient noise, like the hum of a cafe or soft instrumental music, can enhance creative thinking by encouraging abstract thought. Experiment with different soundscapes to find what works best for you. Noise-canceling headphones, nature sounds, or carefully selected playlists can create an immersive creative atmosphere. Your workspace should also include elements of novelty. Creativity flourishes when the brain is exposed to new stimuli. Surround yourself with books, artwork, and objects that spark curiosity. Rotate items in your space regularly to prevent visual stagnation. Even small adjustments, such as rearranging furniture or introducing new textures, can refresh your perspective and activate new ideas. Movement within your environment is essential. Sitting in one place for too long reduces cognitive flexibility. If possible, design your space to encourage movement. A standing desk, an area for brainstorming on a whiteboard, or even a separate space for creative breaks can prevent mental stagnation. Many great thinkers, from Steve Jobs to Charles Darwin, used walking as a way to generate ideas. If you feel stuck, step away from your desk and move. The simple act of changing locations can reset your thought process. Technology should be used intentionally. While digital tools can enhance creativity, they can also be a source of distraction. Set boundaries for technology use. Turn off notifications, use apps that block distractions, or implement scheduled offline time to allow deep creative work. A balance between technology and focused thinking creates an environment where ideas can flourish. Your environment should reflect your creative identity. It should make you feel energized, inspired, and ready to explore new ideas. The most important factor is intentionality. Do not let your surroundings happen by default, design them with purpose. Creativity is not just about what happens in your mind, it is about the world you build around you. The more you shape your environment to support innovation, the more naturally creativity will flow. Your brain responds to the signals it receives. Make sure your space is sending the right ones. Take care, and be well.